Alright everyone, welcome back to some more of the house in Fata Morgana. I want to thank you all for the continued likes and support you guys show this series. It really means a lot. And let me tell you all, this part had me at the edge of my seat, everyone. Oh my gosh, Jacopo's story was just amazing. And so right now guys, I hope you get to see that part and let me know what you think, because here we go. Alright guys, and we are back. But honestly, I wouldn't have minded that. If I was going to make her happy to wipe away all her past misfortune, why couldn't I make it a little dramatic? It wasn't usually my style, but in this case, I wouldn't have objected to her storybook ending. This though. No, this wasn't the kind of story I was hoping for. The heavy curtains separating the guest rooms had been torn to shreds, and they were splattered with blood. A man apparently caught without enough time to defend himself lay splayed out naked on a bed, his empty eyes fixed on the ceiling. The whole area reeked of blood. All I could do was stare stupefied at the carnage. What the hell? Why? How could this happen? My dumbfounded muttering went unanswered though. The few who were still alive could no better make sense of the incomprehensible massacre than me. The sudden arbitrary upheaval of our world. The inexplicable, inescapable reality. Shortly after Morgana stepped out, I heard a woman scream from the front of the brothel. Next, a man shouting. At first I assumed it was one of the customers losing his temper over something, but the tone of the scream seemed somehow off for something like that. It wasn't long before the noise had escalated to alarming levels, so I dashed toward the source of the shouting. A good dozen men, bandits, or maybe thieves, they seemed more organized, had raided the brothel. They slaughtered all the customers, stripping them of any valuables. And they tied up the girls, killing any who resisted. The first thought that rose to my panicked mind was that I needed to find Morgana. I needed to get her out of here no matter what. I couldn't let her birthday turn into a tragedy. She had already been through enough, and I had to make sure she didn't suffer any further. I had to make her life into something good. I searched and I searched, but there was no sign of Morgana anywhere. Until suddenly, something seemed to crash into me from behind, causing me to stagger. It took a few seconds for the pain to set in, which is when I looked down to see the tip of a blade sticking out of my gut. Blood streamed along the metal surface, and there were little bits of flesh caught on the edges. I turned around just in time to see the man holding it kick me away. And before I had time to process what was happening, I hit the floor and lost consciousness. If I were a hero, I could have surely eradicated all the violent intruders in the blink of an eye, saving everyone. Protected that which I wanted to protect. Not had to lose anything. But I was a mere boy. A weak boy, helpless against a few robbers. A useless boy, unable to protect anyone. When I woke up, Maria was kneeling over me, sobbing. No sign of the tough, foul-mouthed girl I knew. Aside from her, there were two other girls also crying, leaving only 4 survivors. Apparently, I wasn't dead. Looking down, I saw my bare stomach wrapped in blood-soaked bandages. The brothel lay in ruins, a bloody pile of torn bedding, clothes, and bodies. I made my way back to the front, and all I could do was stare stupefied at the carnage. What the hell? Why? How could this happen? My dumbfounded muttering went unanswered though. Maria stood beside me, quietly rubbing her trembling arms. Where's Morgana? I couldn't find her. Why not? I'm sorry, I looked everywhere, but I couldn't find her. I'm so sorry. I wanted to say I wasn't blaming her, but I couldn't find the words. If I had power, I could have prevented this from happening. What kind of power would I have needed though? The physical strength to overpower the thieves? No, I needed to think bigger. If I weren't a peasant, but someone of real influence and import, no one would dare stand up to me. No petty thieves would ever even consider a raid on me. And I would have the power to punish anyone who tried. But regardless, this would have never happened at all. I was supposed to give Morgana a good life. To show her the world. To make her smile. If only I had the power. Absolute unflinching power. If I had climbed to the top of the ladder when the chance was offered to me, this all could have been avoided. If only I had asserted my place as royalty a month earlier as the woman who claimed to to be my mother had urged me to. I wanted power. The power to keep everything I cared about safe. The power to change this damn world. The power to stop those filthy thieves. The power to keep her by my side. I wanted power. I heard about the attack in the brothel, and that you were hurt. I'm so glad to see you're well. About a week after the raid, I went to see the woman who professed herself my mother. As you would expect of someone who had served at the old lord's manor, she was very elegant and graceful. The shack where she stayed, though, was a shabby drab place with bare wattle and daub walls. You were concerned about my safety? Of course. Show me a mother who is not always concerned about her child's safety. Says the woman I've never seen until a month ago. Physical distance has no bearing on a mother's love, she said with a soft smile. Age had clearly begun taking its toll on her, but I could see hints of former beauty. If you had gone to speak with the Lord and revealed your lineage when I first came to see you, you would never have been in that kind of danger. There is still time. Go to the Lord's manor. Show him. I'm not really your son, am I? The woman fell silent for a moment, observing me. I could see the resemblance between us, yes, and I had no memories of my mother. It would be nicer if she were to show back up someday, but it just wasn't likely. This whole thing felt extremely contrived. Discussions would progress much smoother if we both know what the other wants out of this arrangement. Start by telling me who you really are. Were you actually a maidservant for the previous lord? She gave a nod, then walked over to a grimy shelf and retrieved a ring that looked very much out of place. It was made of gold, engraved with an elaborate insignia. Look at this. It's the Barnier family crest. The previous lord gave me the ring as a gift, and I've kept it ever since, even after our relationship was discovered and I was chased out. I didn't sell it, because I knew I was with child. They will have no choice but to acknowledge you as a legitimate heir if you show them this ring. Why did you wait so long to come find me then? I was afraid they might kill you if I brought you in as a baby. Why were we separated? Misfortune. One day bandits came and kidnapped you. Presumably they were hired by the Barnier estate because they didn't want your existence coming to light. I consider it a miracle you're still alive. I can only imagine the stern look on my face as I listened to the woman speak. Part of me did indeed want to take everything she said as true. Wanted to believe I was someone important. But I couldn't convince myself I had anything other than a commoner's blood running through my veins. It would appear you've done your research. I don't have any other family to the best of my knowledge, which does indeed make me a good candidate for you to step in and claim your stake on. If I were to guess, your child with the Lord has either passed away or never existed at all. It's probably true that you worked at the Barnier's manor, and it's probably true that you have relations with the former Lord. You were chased out and now you live in poverty. You want to go back to your former, more comfortable life, and while you're at it, take vengeance on the current Lord. But being a woman, you have no means to accomplish that yourself. So you came up with the idea of using a fake son. If your child were still alive, he would be right about my age, wouldn't he? And we look similar enough for you to convincingly claim we're related. But the biggest reason you chose me is because I've made something of a name for myself. Because I was one of the people involved in inciting the revolt 3 years ago. The perfect choice to spearhead a revolution. How dramatic. The man who set the Lord's slaves free was secretly his family. The people would eat it right up. So, how far off am I? For some time, the woman sat in silence. Eventually, she broke it, not by yelling in anger or desperately trying to refute me, but with a smile. I know very well what lurked behind that smile too. Scorn. You're sharp for a filthy peasant. It would seem I chose wisely. I was right. She was a manipulative, conniving shyster. But that I could work with. That fits so much better. I wasn't royalty. I wasn't a hero. I was a filthy peasant. I'm in. That's pretty cool. He's very perceptive. The first thing I did after agreeing to work with the woman was not to approach the Lord, but to reveal my false lineage to my accomplices. They all thought I was joking until I showed them the ring. Then their dreams of revolution started seeming far more realistic. Maria was the one exception. Not only did she not believe me, she tried to stop me from going through with the scheme. Haven't you had enough danger for one life? Come on, forget about all of this revolution stuff. We can build a new brothel and just stay low for the rest of our days. Does that really sound so bad? You're the only friend I've got left, Jacopo, she said somewhat desperately. I sympathized with her concerns, but I didn't want to let this chance to gain some real power slip away. I was done having things taken away from me. Hear me, my fellow citizens, who live in suffering at hands of your supposed lord. Within me flows the blood of the previous lord. I am the rightful heir. Behold the Barnier's golden ring, proof that I am of noble birth. Victims of this terrible tyrant, the time has come to start anew, and I shall be the one to lead you down that path. The poor, the hungry, the deprived, all of you, stand with me. My call to arms stoked the flames in the people's hearts. When the assault on the Lord's manor began, they were an inferno of righteous justice. No one was thinking straight. I was about the only one with something resembling a clear head amidst the chaos. If I were really a hero, then I would have rejoiced in that glorious day, that momentous turning point in the city's history. I would have been honored to have led the charge. But this was all about one woman's avarice and desire for vengeance. This was all about one man's lamentation of his own weakness. I wasn't motivated by any desire to help these people. The Lord backed into a corner, begged for his life. I decapitated him, then held his severed head up for the people. Their cheers and shouts filled the air. As I watched them rejoice, I wondered, was this the future that awaited me? Would the people come after me next? Was my head going to be in one of their hands one day? The king and the other counts acknowledged my royalty, though it was less because I had the Barnier's ring and more because they thought that was the best way to prevent things from getting any messier. So with their approval, I formally became the lord of the land. I also assumed the former lord's name because despite his reputation with his people, it was a name people knew, and one that held far more clout than my own. And just like that, my long-time dream of power had come true. That said, simply becoming the lord didn't mean everything had fallen neatly into place. Many of the local noble families accused me of acquiring my rank illegitimately. They waited, fangs bared for me to slip up. They even tried to set me up on more than one occasion. I couldn't trust anyone. On top of that, if I took too long making the improvements I had promised the people, they would start saying I was just as much of a tyrant as the previous lord. There was only so much I could do at once, though, especially with my hands so full fending off the vulturous nobles. Exhaustion soon began to set in. This wasn't the world I was looking for. The one I wanted to show Morgana. It was a day after draining day of betrayal, constantly having to look over my shoulder, fighting to meet unrealistic expectations. I was starting to lose sight of who I was as a person. I couldn't let anyone see me looking weak. They would see it as an opportunity to take advantage of me, to manipulate me, to eliminate me. I needed power to protect myself from those people. Attaining rank was only the first step. I needed even more power. Enough to ensure no one would ever be giving me orders, could ever play me for a fool. I turned my attention first to bolstering the economy. I provided subsidies to merchants in the city. I expanded trade routes. I made it known that people of any skin color, even those not welcome in other territories, were welcome in my land, trying to bring some vitality to the city. The previous lord had evidently loved to throw parties, squandering away nearly all the tax money on his own entertainment. If he had left me more to work with, I would have used it to clean up and repair the slums, but for the time being, that had to remain another item on the checklist. I needed more money flowing to the city as a whole before I could make any headway on fixing up the poorer areas. Helping the people who needed it most quickly became a secondary objective. I had a pretty good idea what my former accomplices still in the slums were saying about me. He used us! I could practically hear them whispering. Some of them even started publicly slandering me in an attempt to undermine my authority, claiming I wasn't suited to be in a position of power because I had spent most of my life in the slums. It wasn't long before they had convinced the people I was just another tyrant. I had hoped that they, if no one else, would have sympathized with my position, realized I had every intention of helping them, and that I simply didn't have the resources for it yet. But no one saw what I was doing. No one believed me, even when I tried to explain. In one case, I invited an old companion to my manor to discuss matters, but the meeting only turned into an attempt on my life. Having absolutely no one I could trust, no one I could call an ally, hit me a lot harder than I had expected. It twisted my worldview beyond recognition. I had no need for sympathy. I couldn't show care for anyone, otherwise someone would inevitably use it against me, old friends and strangers alike. In fact, those who knew me best. Those who were aware of where I had come from and what I had been before were the ones who fought the hardest to tear me down. Rules needed to be created. Punishments established. I couldn't allow anyone to take this power from me. Anyone who was so much as suggested I had come from the slums, anyone who dared disrespect me, had to be eliminated. All threats exterminated before they could reach me. Somewhere along the line I had lost sight of my original dream. All my desire to do right by the people I cared about. Hell, I didn't have anyone to do right by anymore. Why did I need to climb to the top of the ladder? So no one could kill me. Why did I want money? So no one could mock me. Why did I want power? So no one could oppose me. 4 years passed, and I found myself in a very, very distant place. Miracle blood? Sounds like a sham to me. You never know. They say the sound of her first cry brought rain to the land where she was born, saving the whole village from drought. And they say her blood has the power to cure any disease. One day, a curious rumor came to my attention, the kind of whispering I wouldn't usually put much stock into. It was said that there was a witch living in a cottage by the lake. Few had ever seen her face, but they claimed she had the same voice as a girl who had supposedly performed miracles several years earlier in a faraway village. The people loved their stories of heroes and miracles, and if I could show some support for the churches, then maybe people would stop complaining I was focusing too much on the economy. So I devised a plot to capture the witch and make use of her miracle blood. I would establish a new church, have it be run by a nun the city had been fawning over for some time. They called her the Saintess. There, I would take the witch's blood and call it a miracle medicine, distributing it in exchange for teats, which the people would certainly come for in droves. And if the blood somehow did happen to have special powers, then that would make the scheme that much more effective. I'll worry about the veracity of the rumors later. Right now, all I want is for you to capture her and bring her to me. I was too busy to handle capturing the witch myself, so I went and found someone to handle it for me. He was a former slave who had several years back massacred an entire carriage of slaves and the slave traders transporting them. Obviously not an upstanding citizen, but there was little doubt he would have any trouble apprehending a single witch. The biggest reason I chose him, though, was because he was enamored with the nun. I honestly thought it was rather hilarious, a murderer falling in love with a nun. I had been expecting the man to object, but he agreed almost without hesitation. There was a mansion on the outskirts of the city, which the previous lord had built for himself and had gone unused since his death. It was there I decided to keep the witch, and it was there I decided to establish the church. The nun would have ample space there to provide a temporary shelter to the sick and needy. I thought with what little remained of my conscience that I was doing the right thing. If one witch, probably an old woman at that, was all it cost to accomplish such good, then a worthy sacrifice it was. In an ideal world, it wouldn't matter young or old, a human being was an unacceptable price for anything. But this was far from an ideal world. So I decided that what little remained of this woman's life was best, no, the only acceptable course of action. She would probably despise me for it, but I would gladly accept her hatred in exchange for the benefits her blood would bring the city. It's our responsibility to offer a helping hand to the sick and the poor, to pray for the abandoned souls. Morgana's words from years back popped into my head. I believed that as aggressive, self-centered, and utterly lacking compassion as my methods may have been, I was following that mantra. I was offering a helping hand to people who needed it in the only way I knew how. I wasn't so dense as to think she would approve of me making an old woman pay the price for my charity, though. Doing this made me no better than a thug. But everything has a price. For every extravagant feast held, a dozen people go the night without food. That's simply the way of the world. I was no god. I was no saint. I had blood on my hands. I was a villain. I knew no way to accomplish good without doing bad. After the swordsman departed, I took some time to myself. I filled a goblet with water, smelled it, then gave a bit of it to my pet dog before gulping down the rest of it. Are you still out there somewhere, Morgana? What would you think of me if you saw what I had become? Wow, it must really suck that he didn't know that the witch was Morgana. Oh man, that's ugh. Whew. Several days later than originally planned, the swordsman finally arrived at the mansion. I had chosen the observation tower on the grounds for the witch's prison, and it was there I waited for him. He showed up with a burlap sack swung over his shoulder, setting it down on the ground and saying, "There's your witch." I could only hear muffled grunting from inside the sack, but it didn't sound like an old woman inside. The man's clothes and the bag both reeked of blood. "Tell me you didn't harm her, dog." "I smell blood." "You only instructed me not to kill her. Mistakes were made, limbs were lost. I cleaned up all the blood I got on me. No one suspected anything. That you were able to immediately recognize it as the smell of blood says quite a bit, Lord. You have killed before, haven't you? Enough yapping. She is alive, yes? Of course. I felt a tinge of guilt for the woman, but it didn't last long. Her role in my scheme and the fate that awaited her was the same regardless of the condition she arrived in. I tossed my gaze from the man to the bag. He crouched down to untie it, revealing a young girl with one arm severed. As soon as I saw her, I knew exactly who the girl was. But why? What was she doing in the bag? Why was she the lakeside witch? What was she doing here? Why was she so pale and shaking? Why had I ordered her captured? How could I have done that? How could I have let this happen to her? Morgana. My voice was hoarse and rattling. She looked up at me, her face just as disfigured and hideous as it had been 4 years before. My mind flashed back to her birthday, to when I had considered offering to take her as my lifetime partner if her face hadn't healed in 4 years' time. Is that you? Her question yanked me out of my memories. You remember me? Did Morgana remember me? The 3 years we had spent together. What kind of person had I been? The boy who had refused to give up putting ointment on her face. Those horribly unromantic encounters at the graveyard. Her taking shots at me taking shots at her. All that time we had shared. How could I ever forget? Morgana. She remembered me. How could I ever forget all the pain and humiliation you put me through? How could I ever forget the blood sabbaths you so loved to hold? What? What was she talking about? Haven't had enough, have you? Leaving scars on every inch of my body wasn't enough for you. You haven't had your fill of my blood? No, that wasn't me. I was the one who had tried to heal those wounds. You're the man who bound me, cut me up, called me a witch, and then tried to kill me. I haven't forgotten you even for a moment. No, Morgana. I was the man who rescued you from him. I don't care how much my father preaches forgiveness. That's the one thing you'll never get from me. I despise you with all my soul. I revile you with every fiber of my being. For every scar you gave me, I give you a lifetime of hatred. No, Morgana! I was not aware you knew the witch, Lord. His voice made my blood run cold. I didn't just know her. Morgana was... This man, the Lord, he destroyed me, mind and body. No, that was another man. He was already dead. I had just taken his place. I had come from the slums. I had been part of the slaves' revolt. I knew I had to tell her. He ruined my life. But between the sting of Morgana's accusations and my need to protect my current position, I couldn't muster the strength to do it. If someone were to find out I wasn't legitimate royalty, that I had come from the slums, then everything I worked so hard to build up for who though, would come crumbling down. Do I really think it hasn't already? All I had left was my power, my rank. Is that what I actually wanted? I couldn't afford to lose that too. When did I first start straying from the path? Yes, I know her. Or, I knew her years ago. I see. What do you want to do then, Lord? You look sick. This doesn't change anything. We lock the witch up and proceed as planned. Why? Why couldn't I tell her the truth? How? How could I keep her imprisoned? What had I wanted power for in the first place? Would anyone ever believe me? If I said this wasn't how I wanted things to turn out. Would anyone ever believe me? Before me floats a man twisted and writhing in pain. Although whether what I'm looking at could be said to resemble a human is a difficult question. It's a hazy, indistinct shape. On the precipice of being consumed by darkness everlasting, I know very well what I'm looking at. The moments before a man's soul shatters. Did I do the same thing to him that Morgana did to me? Was it I who summoned the darkness? Who laid his past bare? Who forced him to relive those events? To experience once more everything he felt, everything he thought? Who put him through that despair a second time? I can only imagine how he must have felt, causing someone he once cared for so much pain. The things he did are abhorrent, more than deserving of reproach, and it would undoubtedly be easier for him to simply vanish into the eternal abyss. But I can't allow that to happen. He still has work to do. His story is essential. It's almost certain Morgana still doesn't know who he really is. He needs to face her, to reveal the truth with his own words. That's the only way we're gonna get her to have a change of heart. That's not all he has to say to her either. So I must bring him back, pull him out of the darkness. I grab the man by the arm and begin scouring the blackness for an exit. After some time, I see a speck of glistening high above, so I make my way upwards, back into the harsh light of the real world. The darkness parts and we re-emerge in the dining hall. The man is still straddling me, dagger held above his head, just as he had been before I trekked into his past. His eyes are open wide and his hand is trembling. A few moments sad because I didn't get the chance to show my gratitude to people very dear to me. She was crying as she did. So that's who she was talking about. It was you. There's no way. When exactly did the brothel attack 4 years ago take place? It was the winter. I see. Winter 4 years ago is when I met the girl too. That reminds me. She mentioned something unpleasant happening to her 4 years ago during one of our conversations. That she was forced to part ways with the people who taught her that humans are capable of kindness. She was talking about you. There's still time. Alright guys, I'm gonna have to end the video for today. Thank you all for watching. This has been incredible. I loved every aspect of this story, or at least his part of his story, his truth, if anything. So we're going to continue onwards, guys, in the next one. So thank you all for watching.